Welcome to the debate. Today we're confronting what is really the defining tension of the digital age, the global erosion of individual privacy. It's being fueled by state security interests on one side and, well, unprecedented commercial exploitation on the other.
And that brings us to a really profound and frankly chilling question. Is this systematic collection and use of our personal data? It doesn't matter who holds the controls, Washington, Beijing, or Moscow. Is it an unavoidable tool for security, or is it, as our source material puts it, a path to digital slavery?
That framing is essential, and to really get at the heart of it, let's start with a specific case from our source material, the scenario of Citizen Adam.
Right. Adam's story it's a perfect example of how this works. His life was, for all intents and purposes, quietly ruined by this synergy of data, what experts call the mosaic effect.
Exactly. He wasn't profiled for one single thing. It was the combination of three seemingly innocuous data points over several years. First, a satirical comment he posted on social media way back in 2014, something he'd probably forgotten all about.
And then second, his weekly geolocation data, which was sold by a simple weather app on his phone, indicating these regular visits to a psychiatrist's office.
And the final piece of the puzzle, the purchase of a specific book, The History of Revolutions.
And it's the synergy of that data where the profile becomes toxic. I mean, no crime was committed, none. Yet the algorithm, combining this history of political interests with what it inferred as psychological fragility, deemed him a high-risk profile.
The consequences were severe. He faced professional rejection, denial of services, and he was even targeted with calculated emotional exploitation through advertising. He wasn't accused of anything. He was just prejudged.
Judged by an automated system that decided he was unreliable.
And that scenario, I think, perfectly establishes our positions today. I will be arguing that this kind of comprehensive profile building, while it's certainly imperfect, is an inevitable and, I'd say, essential tool for risk management and societal protection in our world.
And I will argue that when the state, or, its commercial partners, gain this predictive power, it fundamentally converts the citizen from a rights-bearing individual into a defenseless commodity, a profile stripped of any meaningful legal defense or autonomy.
My core thesis really rests on the state's fundamental duty to provide security. In this digital age, that has to supersede the historical, maybe absolute right to privacy. The challenge today isn't just about detecting known threats. It's about anticipating new ones. The power of this mosaic effect is its rational utility. You can anticipate collective behavior, maybe predict participation in an unauthorized protest, and manage that instability before it becomes a catastrophe. Now, the methods differ radically across the globe. The US uses market forces, China uses social engineering, Russia uses brute force. But the underlying goal is rational statecraft, reducing systemic risk for the good of the population.
I see why you emphasize the protective function. I do. But where my position fundamentally diverges is when surveillance shifts from investigating actual committed crimes to just cataloging our vulnerabilities, our psychological weak points, our political sympathies. When the profile that's built on you is, as the source material says, more accurate than you know about yourself, you are left completely vulnerable. A system can just reject you for, mysterious administrative reasons. And this is the critical part. The Constitution theoretically protects you from the government, but it does nothing to protect you from the algorithm. And why is that? Because the source data is often considered proprietary commercial intelligence, and it's shielded from any kind of judicial review. You're judged and convicted inside a black box you can't even see, let alone confront.
That tension you're describing between constitutional safeguards and commercial data, it's most pronounced in the American model. That model tries to leverage the efficiency of the digital marketplace while, still paying lip service to individual liberty.
Exactly. And that is why we have to focus on the institutional hypocrisy of the American system, what's called the data broker loophole. The Fourth Amendment is very clear. Government agencies, your FBI, DHS, NSA, they need a warrant based on probable cause to seize sensitive data. But these agencies are actively circumventing that safeguard by simply buying the data.
Circumventing is a powerful word. I might frame it a bit differently. The government isn't illegally seizing data, it's participating in a functioning market. The citizen has already voluntarily, albeit, often carelessly, traded their location data, their browsing history, for the convenience of a free app or a game. Data brokers just aggregate this information. So, if this information is already in the commercial domain, isn't it a rational, even necessary move for the state to access it through legal commercial means?
But the flaw in that logic is the premise of voluntariness. Many people do not understand the terms of service they're clicking on, and even if they did, location data is often required for the app to even function. So this commercial acquisition of data, it fundamentally hollows out the spirit of the Fourth Amendment. Agencies get this incredibly specific information on millions of Americans without any individualized suspicion, which is precisely what the warrant was designed to prevent. It turns the entire population into a suspect pool.
I think that critique focuses a bit narrowly on domestic policing, and it neglects the strategic geopolitical necessity here. Accessing this data is crucial for global intelligence. Consider Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. It allows the government to target the communications of non-U.S. persons located outside the United States. Now, it's controversial because it results in the incidental collection of U.S. citizen data, but it is an absolutely critical tool for identifying terrorist plots and state-sponsored cyber warfare. It's not about punishing Adam for buying a book. It's about national security against high-level foreign threats.
I understand the strategic need for foreign intelligence, but the line between foreign targeting and domestic surveillance is rapidly blurring, precisely because of this purchased commercial data. An American citizen can be swept into this system, their profile created and used against them with no possibility of legal redress.
While the transparency definitely requires strict oversight, and I agree, it is demonstrably lacking in the US, the sheer efficacy of this kind of profiling can't be dismissed. And that brings us to a model that has embraced that efficacy without apology, the Chinese system. I would challenge your position by defending the Chinese approach as a kind of radically effective statecraft aimed purely at order.
Order, yes, but at the cost of crushing the soul of civil society.
Well, consider the scope. The Skynet and Sharp Eyes projects, we're talking millions of AI-connected cameras, facial recognition, gait analysis, integrated behavior monitoring. But the social credit system is the crucial part. It's not just surveillance. It's an explicit attempt at social engineering. It links your real world and your digital behavior to a national score, creating this powerful, constant disincentive for any behavior the state deems antisocial or politically critical. And there is a demonstrable correlation between the rollout of this system and reported drops in certain types of crime. From a utilitarian perspective, it delivers stability.
I'm just not convinced by that line of reasoning. Because defining stability as political compliance that's maintained through pervasive fear it's Orwellian. The social credit system doesn't just manage crime, it destroys the capacity for dissent. It is maybe the purest form of digital governance designed to manufacture consent. When your score drops, for anything from littering to criticizing a local official online, the sanctions are severe and instant. Technical denial.
And what do you mean exactly by technical denial?
Prohibited from buying high-speed train tickets, airplane tickets, which effectively locks you out of the national economy. Children can be blocked from good schools if their parents have a poor score. This system turns society into a digital prison where the state actively encourages citizens to monitor their neighbors to keep their own scores high. And what's more, this entire model is being exported globally through the digital Silk Road. It's an existential threat to personal freedom everywhere.
It is certainly an explicit choice, trading maximal liberty for maximal stability. You're right that it's profoundly antithetical to Western liberal ideals. But if a state believes its very survival depends on eliminating all internal unpredictability, then this approach is a perfectly rational, albeit ruthless function of sovereignty.
And it's that commitment to sovereignty achieved through brute technological force that brings us to our third model, Russia. It dispenses with both commercial markets and social engineering. I challenge you to defend the sheer coercion in the Russian system, specifically SORM.
SORM, the System for Operative Investigative Activities, is undeniably heavy-handed.
It is. The SORM architecture mandates the installation of these black boxes inside every single telecom provider and ISP in the country. This isn't a subpoena process. It gives the FSB direct, passive access to all user data, all communications. It is controlled by brute force with zero pretense of judicial oversight. It's the literal, physical domination of the digital infrastructure.
That's a compelling point regarding domestic liberty, and SORM is certainly the most coercive tool we've looked at. But that critique misses the fundamental, existential strategic objective driving the Russian model: geopolitical defense. Have you considered the primary driver of what they call the RU-net, or the sovereign internet?
The self-imposed isolation, you mean?
Precisely. Russia is systematically preparing for a total war scenario, not necessarily a kinetic one, but a digital conflict, where the US might cut off its access to global cables or critical internet services. Building a truly internal, sovereign network that guarantees the continuity of government and banking. It's not just about surveillance, it's a critical strategy for maintaining national sovereignty against external aggression. It ensures the state can't be destabilized by a foreign power just flipping a switch.
So the argument is that this massive domestic surveillance apparatus is just a secondary byproduct of a necessary defensive measure?
It's the cost of absolute strategic resilience. The control of internal communications is required to ensure that the infrastructure remains purely domestic. So the severity of the internal control is a direct reflection of the perceived severity of the external threat. We can abhor the domestic result, but we have to acknowledge the rational geopolitical framework behind it.
It is fascinating, isn't it, to see how the three global powers, despite their radically different philosophical foundations, have all converged on the same core belief. Comprehensive data control is the ultimate currency of power.
And I have to acknowledge the profound, undeniable cost to privacy and individual rights in all three systems. But I reiterate my point. The US, China, and Russia have converged on the practical necessity of data aggregation to ensure state continuity and security. The state that knows the most survives the longest.
And I'll reiterate mine. While the methods vary, money in the US, shaming in China, brute force in Russia, the outcome is the same. The individual is transformed from a citizen with rights into a defenseless profile. The profound danger here is being targeted not for what you did, but for what an algorithm predicts you might do. It completely undermines the principle of innocence until proven guilty.
The source material leaves us with a necessary and, I think, chilling final thought. Privacy is no longer a physical curtain you close in your home. It is just a list of settings controlled by external powers.
Exactly. So the fundamental question is no longer, are they watching me? The answer to that is yes, everywhere. The real terrifying question is, what will they do with what they know about me tomorrow?